David told me he would be working late at the office, while actually rushing home to cook dinner for his other wife. While I thought he was a faithful, hardworking husband, he had been living with two different identities for 8 years. Now it was time for my revenge. My name is Sarah, and I am 34 years old. Until 3 days ago, I believed I was living in a perfect marriage with my husband, David. We had been together for 8 years, married for 6, and I thought I completely knew the man I shared my bed with every night. I was wrong about everything. David worked as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, which required frequent travel. At least, that's what I believed. Every Monday morning, he would leave our suburban home in Denver with his leather briefcase and return Friday evening with stories of client meetings, hotel dinners, and long drives between cities. His salary was decent, enough for us to afford our 3-bedroom house and comfortable lifestyle, though we were always careful with money. I worked as a dental hygienist at a local clinic, maintaining steady hours that allowed me to handle household duties while David traveled. We had discussed having children many times, but David always insisted we should wait until his career stabilized and we had more savings. "I want to give our children the best possible life," he would say, stroking my hair as we lay in bed. "Let's just wait a little longer." Our marriage appeared solid from the outside. David was attentive when he was home, bringing me flowers, cooking elaborate dinners, and listening to my stories about difficult patients or office drama. He never missed important dates, always remembered anniversaries, and seemed genuinely devoted during our weekend time together. Friends often commented on how lucky I was to have such a committed husband. The first crack in my perfect world appeared 3 weeks ago, during what seemed like an ordinary Thursday evening. David had returned from his weekly business trip and was unusually exhausted. After dinner, he collapsed on the couch and fell asleep watching television. His phone, which he normally kept within arm's reach, lay forgotten on the kitchen counter. I had never been a suspicious wife. David had never given me reason to doubt his fidelity or honesty. But something about the way his phone kept buzzing with notifications made me curious. When I picked it up to move it to the charger, I noticed the messages were from contacts I didn't recognize: Emma, Connor, Lily. The phone was locked, but I knew David's passcode. He had shared it with me years earlier when I needed to call his office from his phone during a family emergency. 0824, his birthday. My fingers hesitated over the screen for a moment before entering the numbers. What I found changed everything. The messages weren't work-related. Emma had sent photos of 2 children, a boy who looked about 7 and a girl around 5, both with David's distinctive dark eyes and dimpled smile. "The kids miss their daddy," one message read. "When are you coming home?" Another said, "Lily lost her first tooth today. She wants to show you." My hands shook as I scrolled through months of conversations. David calling Emma sweetheart and my love, planning weekend activities with Connor and Lily, discussing school enrollment, doctor appointments, and grocery shopping. All the mundane details of family life that he shared with me were being repeated in another household, with another woman, with children who called him daddy. I sat in my kitchen at midnight, staring at evidence that my husband had been living a double life for years. According to the message history, Emma lived in Colorado Springs, about 2 hours south of Denver. The timestamps revealed David's pattern. When he told me he was traveling for work Monday through Friday, he was actually spending 3 days in Colorado Springs with Emma and the children, returning to Denver only on Thursdays and Fridays to maintain his cover story. The messages revealed even more disturbing details. David had been supporting Emma and the children financially for years. He had signed apartment leases, made car payments, and even had a joint bank account that I knew nothing about. The man who constantly worried about our savings and postponed having children with me was already a father to 2 kids with another woman. I didn't confront him that night. Something inside me had shifted from shock to cold calculation. David was a careful man, methodical in his deception. If I accused him without a plan, he would simply deny everything, delete the evidence, and become more careful. I needed time to understand the full scope of his betrayal and decide what I wanted to do about it. Friday morning, David left for work as usual, kissing my forehead and promising to bring home Thai food for dinner. I called in sick to my dental office and spent the day investigating. Using the information from his phone, I found Emma's social media profiles. She was 31, a kindergarten teacher, and according to her Facebook page, had been in a relationship with David Martinez for 8 years. David Martinez, not David Coleman, the name on our marriage certificate and joint bank accounts. He had created an entirely different identity for his second life. Emma's photos told the story David had hidden from me: birthday parties where he appeared as a devoted father, family vacations to places he had never mentioned visiting, Christmas mornings with children opening presents from Daddy, a parallel universe where my husband existed as someone else's partner and father. The children, Connor and Lily, were beautiful. In photo after photo, David looked genuinely happy with them, more relaxed than I had ever seen him. The boy had David's stubborn cowlick that I used to tease him about. The girl had his laugh, captured in a video where she was showing him a drawing she had made at school. As I dug deeper, I discovered David's deception was even more elaborate than I had initially realized. He maintained 2 cell phones, 2 email accounts, 2 social media profiles, and 2 completely different identities. David Coleman was married to me and worked in pharmaceutical sales. David Martinez was in a long-term relationship with Emma, worked as a construction supervisor, and was father to Connor and Lily. The construction supervisor job explained David's Monday through Wednesday absences. He actually did work during those days, just not in the pharmaceutical industry as he had told me. The elaborate stories about client meetings and business trips were carefully constructed lies designed to explain his schedule while protecting both relationships. That evening, when David returned home with Thai food and stories about a difficult client in Grand Junction, I watched him with new eyes. Every gesture, every word, every expression of affection felt like a performance. This man had been lying to me for years, with apparent ease, switching between 2 identities as casually as changing clothes. Over the weekend, I maintained normal behavior while internally planning my next steps. David seemed relaxed and affectionate, probably relieved to have successfully navigated another week of deception. He cooked breakfast, worked in the garden, and suggested we start planning a vacation to celebrate our upcoming 7th wedding anniversary. "Where would you like to go?" he asked, scrolling through travel websites on his laptop Sunday evening. "I don't know," I replied, wondering if he had taken Emma and the children on trips using money from our joint savings account. "Surprise me." By Sunday night, I had made my decision. David's betrayal was complete and calculating. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or an affair that had gotten out of hand. He had deliberately constructed 2 separate lives, making promises to both families while fully committing to neither. But rather than simply confronting him or filing for divorce, I decided David deserved to experience the same shock and displacement he had inflicted on me. He had carefully managed information to control both relationships. Now I would manage information to destroy his false sense of security. My plan was elegant in its simplicity. David believed he could maintain his double life indefinitely by controlling what each family knew about the other. But what if that control was suddenly removed? What if both families learned the truth simultaneously and were given the opportunity to compare notes about the man who had deceived them both? Monday morning, I kissed David goodbye as he left for another week with his other family. He promised to call that evening and reminded me to water the plants he had been fussing over all weekend. I smiled and waved from the doorway, knowing it would be the last time he left our house, believing his secret was safe. The revenge I had planned would be comprehensive, public, and perfectly timed. By Friday evening, David's carefully constructed world would collapse entirely, and both Emma and I would finally know the truth about the man we had trusted with our hearts. Tuesday morning, a few hours after David had left for Colorado Springs as usual, I put my plan into action. My first step was to contact Emma. But I needed to do this carefully. David couldn't become suspicious, which meant Emma also couldn't know the situation just yet. On Emma's Facebook profile, I found the school where she worked, Pine Valley Elementary. I called the school and introduced myself as David's work colleague. "Can I speak to Teacher Emma? I'm David Martinez's business partner and I need to discuss an urgent matter with her." A few minutes later, Emma came to the phone, her voice sounding young and friendly. "Hello, are you David's work colleague? He's probably at the construction site right now. His phone probably doesn't have signal." "Actually," I said carefully, "there's an important matter about David that we need to discuss. Could we meet face to face? Are you available during lunch break today?" Concern appeared in her voice. "What happened? Did something happen to David?" "David is fine, but there is a serious situation we need to discuss. With your permission, could we meet at Central Cafe in Pine Valley at 12:30? Emma hesitated. "Who did you say you were? David never mentioned you." "My name is Sarah." And I'm sure David never mentioned me either. This answer made Emma even more worried, but her curiosity won. She agreed to the meeting. When I arrived at Central Cafe, I recognized Emma immediately. She was as beautiful as in her photos, with short brown hair and a kind face. She was waiting for me at a corner table, nervously wrapping her hands around her cup. "Sarah," she said, standing up, "are you really David's work colleague?" "No," I said as I sat at the table. "I'm David's wife." Emma's face went completely white. The cup slipped from her hand onto the table, coffee spilling everywhere. "That's impossible," she whispered. "David isn't married. We live together. We're engaged." I took out screenshots from David's phone from my purse, messages with Emma, photos of the children, family pictures. "David Coleman," I said quietly, "has been my husband for 6 years, and David Martinez has been your partner for 8 years. Emma trembled as she went through the documents. Tears began streaming from her eyes. How is this possible? Connor and Lily are his children. We're a family." And I thought I was going to start a family with him too, until I learned the truth 3 days ago. Over the next hour, Emma and I compared our stories. The lies David had told both of us, the systems he had built, the 2 different identities he maintained. Emma told me that David had told her he worked in construction, that he stayed out of town 3 days a week because of big projects in Denver. "He comes every Thursday evening and leaves Sunday evening," she said, crying. "The children miss him half the week, but I try to be understanding because he's so hardworking." We learned that David had made marriage plans with both of us, wanted children from both of us. According to what he told Emma, they would get married when his financial situation improved and maybe have another child. "What are we going to do?" Emma asked, wiping her eyes with a napkin. "What will happen to the children?" "They're your children," I said. "David became a father to them. That won't change. But you don't have to live in a relationship built on lies anymore." I explained my plan to Emma. Friday evening, when David returned to Denver with his normal routine, she would come to meet him, with the children. "But why?" Emma asked. "Why in such a dramatic way?" "Because David deceived both of us for 8 years. He played with both our lives. Now the control should be ours." Emma initially hesitated, but eventually agreed. She asked how she would explain the situation to the children. "Tell them we're going to surprise their daddy. Technically, it's true." Wednesday evening, David called me at his usual time. His voice sounded tired but content. "How are things going?" I asked, knowing that every word was now a lie. "Good, but very busy. I want to rest a bit this weekend. Maybe we could go to the movies." "Sure. I have a surprise for you, by the way." "A surprise? What surprise?" "You'll find out Friday evening," I said, smiling. David laughed curiously. "Can you give me a hint?" "Let's say it's something life-changing." Thursday, Emma and I arranged the final details. That evening, David would return to Denver, maintain his normal routine. Friday evening at 6 o'clock, Emma and the children would come to our house. Friday morning, David kissed me as usual when leaving for work. "I'm really curious about tonight's surprise," he said. "It will be an evening you'll never forget," I said, sincerely. I spent the day preparing the house, toys for the children, tea for Emma, and, of course, for David, the truth. At exactly 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I knew David hadn't returned from work yet. When I opened the door, Emma stood there with Connor and Lily beside her. The children looked at the house with curious eyes. "Is this where Dowdy works?" Lily asked, innocently. "No, sweetheart," Emma said, still trembling in her voice. "This is Daddy's other house." Connor frowned. "Daddy has another house?" I let them in. The children went to the living room and started playing with toys, while Emma sat with me in the kitchen, both of us waiting for David to arrive. At 6:45, we heard David's car. "Are you ready?" I asked Emma. She just nodded, her chest rising and falling. When David opened the door, he first heard Connor's voice. "Daddy! Daddy's here!" the child shouted, running toward the door. David's steps stopped. Then Lily's voice was heard. "Daddy, this house is so big. Whose is this?" David walked heavily into the living room and froze at what he saw before him. While Connor and Lily hugged him, Emma sat in the corner, her eyes red. I stood at the kitchen door, watching the moment when 8 years of lies collapsed. "Sarah," he said, his voice coming out hoarse. "Hello, David. Or should I have said David Martinez?" Connor looked up at his father. "Daddy, who's this lady? Why is she calling you David Coleman?" And at that moment, 8 years of lies crumbled beneath David's feet. The silence that followed was deafening. David's face cycled through emotions I had never seen before: panic, guilt, desperation, and finally a kind of defeated resignation. He knelt down to the children's level, his hands shaking as he tried to maintain composure. "Connor, Lily," he said softly, This is Sarah. She's a very good friend of Daddy's." "No, David," I said firmly, stepping into the living room. "I'm not going to let you lie to them anymore. I'm your wife." Emma stood up from her chair, her voice barely a whisper. "David, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you haven't been married this whole time." David looked between us, trapped like an animal with nowhere to run. Lily tugged on his shirt. "Daddy, why is everyone crying? Are you in trouble?" For the next hour, the most painful conversation of my life unfolded. David tried every strategy he could think of: denial, partial admissions, emotional manipulation, promises to change. But faced with both families together, with evidence from both phones, with bank records and photos, and 8 years of documented lies, his carefully constructed world crumbled completely. The children didn't understand everything, but they understood enough. Their daddy, who had told them he worked far away building things, actually lived with another lady in another house. Emma tried to comfort them while processing her own shock and betrayal. 8 years. She kept repeating. 8 years of my life. 6 years of marriage for me, but 8 years of lies. David finally stopped trying to explain or justify. He sat on the couch with his head in his hands, the weight of his deception finally crushing him. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now you face the consequences," I said. "Emma and the children deserve truth and stability, and I deserve a life without lies." Over the following weeks, the practical details were sorted out. David moved out of our house and into a small apartment. Emma ended their relationship, but allowed him supervised visits with Connor and Lily. The divorce proceedings began immediately. The most difficult part was watching the children struggle to understand why their family had fallen apart. Connor became angry and withdrawn. Lily had nightmares and kept asking when Daddy was coming home. Emma handled it with grace, getting them into counseling and maintaining as much stability as possible. As for me, I discovered something unexpected in the aftermath of David's betrayal. The life I had thought I wanted, the perfect marriage, the suburban house, the careful savings account had all been an illusion. But in facing the truth and taking control of the situation, I found a strength I didn't know I possessed. 6 months later, Emma and I had developed an unlikely friendship. We met for coffee occasionally, sharing the unique bond of having survived David's elaborate deception together. The children were doing better, adjusting to their new reality with the resilience that children possess. David tried several times to reconcile with both of us, but neither Emma nor I were interested in rebuilding relationships built on lies. He had made his choices for 8 years, prioritizing his own comfort over the emotional well-being of everyone who loved him. The last time I saw David was at the final divorce hearing. He looked older, worn down by the consequences of maintaining his double life. As we left the courthouse, he tried once more to apologize. "Sarah, I never meant for it to happen this way. I loved you both." "You can't love someone and lie to them every day for years," I replied. "What you loved was the control." I walked away from David Coleman that day, and from the woman I had been when I believed his lies. The revenge I had planned wasn't just about exposing his deception. It was about reclaiming my own truth and helping Emma do the same. Some people asked if I regretted the dramatic confrontation, if it wouldn't have been kinder to handle things quietly. But David had stolen years from both Emma and me through his deception. We deserved to face him together, to see his lies crumble in real time, to know that we weren't crazy or paranoid or suspicious. Today, I live in a smaller apartment, but with complete honesty. I'm dating again, slowly and carefully, having learned the difference between love and performance. Emma is thriving as a single mother, and Connor and Lily are healing with the help of therapy and their mother's unwavering love. As for David, I heard he's still trying to maintain some version of his double life, though on a much smaller scale. Some people never learn. But Emma and I learned the most important lesson of all, that living with truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living with beautiful lies. And sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to live in someone else's deception any longer. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you was living a double life? Share your story in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more true stories of betrayal and recovery. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth.